On September 2025, large-scale protests and demonstrations have taken place across Nepal, predominantly organized by Generation Z students and young citizens. Commonly referred to as the Gen Z protests, they began following a nationwide ban on numerous social media platforms, but had their origin in the public's frustration with corruption and display of wealth by government officials and their families, as well as allegations of mismanagement of public funds. The movement expanded to encompass broader issues of governance, transparency, and political accountability. The protests escalated with violence against public officials and vandalism of government and political buildings taking place throughout the country. Now, on the 9th of September 2025, Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli, along with a few government ministers, resigned and fled the country in response to the protests. Now, what really happened, and what led to the massive uprising that shook Nepal to its core? Join us as we discover what truly took place. Subscribe, like, and turn on your notification button. Now, on the 4th of September 2025, the government of Nepal ordered the shutdown of 26 social media platforms, including Facebook, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Signal, and Snapchat, for failing to register under the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology's new rules. 33% of Nepalese GDP comes from remittances, with exit permits being issued, alongside 20% youth unemployment, mean that these remittances keep households afloat and pay import bills, but also indicate a lack of structural transformation in the domestic economy toward an employment-first model, pushing the youth into work in online spaces. Critics allege the shutdown was prompted by a social media trend highlighting nepotism, focusing on the undue privileges enjoyed by the children and relatives of influential political leaders. Prior to the protests, the average Nepali made $1,400 per year, while families of the country's ruling elite displayed their wealth on social media. This Nepo Kid trend prompted significant public anger, particularly from Generation Z users. The median age of Nepal's population is 25, meaning that a large part of the population is in Gen Z, the age group that uses social media the most. Due to this, the country's largely rural, rough terrain and substantial migration abroad, Nepal has some of the highest social media usage in South Asia, with nearly one account for every 2 people. On September 8th, large gatherings took place in Kathmandu, particularly at Maidigar Mandala and around the Federal Parliament building, New Baneshwar, with tens of thousands of participants. The protests were organized as a peaceful rally by Hami Nepal, an NGO whose website highlights earthquake relief projects. Anil Bania, one of the protest organizers from Hami Nepal, argued that the government cracked down hard on the protesters after one of their own, Meghraj Giri, threw a rock at a CCTV camera. Bania stated that what had started out as a peaceful protest had been hijacked by external forces and political party cadres, but that regardless, the government should not have responded to stones being thrown with live ammunition from the army. The protest had no formal leadership, with individuals joining voluntarily to oppose corruption and the ban on social media. The demonstrations escalated when protesters attempted to enter the Federal Parliament of Nepal, leading security forces to respond with tear gas, water cannons, rubber bullets, and live ammunition. The Straw Hat Pirates' Jolly Roger flag from the manga series One Piece was used by some protesters, in similar fashion to the 2025 Indonesian protests. The Kathmandu District Administration Office imposed a curfew in parts of the capital near government buildings, but this did little to deter the protesters, who were now emboldened by the harsh crackdown. In the evening, the government lifted the ban on social media platforms. Home Minister Ramesh Lekhak resigned. A curfew was imposed in several major cities, including Kathmandu, Birgunj, Bairahawa, Butwal, Pokhara, Itahari, and Damak. However, by then, the protests were no longer just about the social media ban, but were now calling for a total overthrow of the government due to its heavy-handed and bloody crackdown. The confrontations resulted in at least 19 people killed and 347 people injured. On September 9th, after issuing a directive to his Communist Party of Nepal, unified Marxist-Leninist ministers not to resign their posts, Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli resigned and fled to an army barracks in Shivapuri at Budanilkanta. There were conflicting reports President Ramchandra Pudel resigned as well. However, the Nepalese army denied reports of Pudel's resignation. Despite this, protests continued nationwide. Protesters set fire to many government buildings, part of Singha Darbar, the administrative headquarters of Nepal, the adjacent building of the Supreme Court of Nepal, the President's residence at Sital Niwas, the Prime Minister's residence at Baluwatar, and the headquarters of the Communist Party, UML. Multiple reports allege that Nepali Army Commander Ashok Raj Sigdel advised Oli to resign in order for the army to restore peace. Violent actions targeted several prominent locations in Kathmandu, including the residences of the Prime Minister and the President, as well as the homes of various government ministers and members of Parliament, which were set ablaze by protesters. The Parliament building was set on fire. The headquarters of the UML and Nepali Congress was vandalized, with party flags stripped and burned. Security forces, including the Nepali army, facilitated the safe evacuation of politicians from affected areas and evacuated to Tribhuvan International Airport, TIA, while attempting to control the escalating incidents of arson and destruction. Minister of Agriculture Ram Nath Adhikari and Health Minister Pradeep Paudel, along with 21 MPs from the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, resigned, along with all the members of parliament of the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party. Several members left Oli's UML party. Protesters went to TIA to block the political leaders from fleeing. The airport was closed and occupied by the Nepali army. There was ensuing confusion as hundreds of travelers were left stranded in the TIA, prompted airlines to order personnel to keep all individuals sheltered within the airport. Scheduled international flights were diverted to Pokhara or canceled. Kantipur Media House was set on fire in the early evening. The online news portal was stopped due to damage in its server, forcing it to post in Facebook as an alternative. Other buildings burned by protesters were the new Hilton Hotel in Kathmandu and the Ministry of Health building in Ramshapath, the latter of which was designed by Louis Kahn. Workers and independent communists in Nepal formed the Safal Workers' Street Committee to defend protesters from violence in reaction to the killings of 8 September. Their demands included the arrest of the government, the disarming of the state, the expropriation of enemy property, the arming of the Nepalese population, the dissolution of parliament, and the election of worker assemblies. Several political leaders and their residences were attacked. Former Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Dayuba and his wife Arzu Rana Dayuba were injured while their house was set on fire. They were handed to the police by protesters. Deputy Prime Minister Prakashman Singh's house and vehicle were set on fire, followed by the house of former President Bidya Devi Bhandari at Bengal, Kathmandu. Former Prime Minister Jalanath Kanal's residence was also set on fire, injuring his wife Rajya Lakshmi Chitrakar. The residence of Ramesh Lekhak was also set on fire in Naikop, Kathmandu. In Rupandehi district, the houses of local politicians Bal Krishna Kand, Bhoj Prasad Shrestha, and several mayors were burned. In Chitwan district, the house of former Prime Minister Prachanda was set on fire. His daughter, Ganga Dahal's house, was also set in fire at Lalitpur. A person was found dead the next day in the house. In Hatada, several government offices were vandalized and set on fire. In Karnali province, the parliament building and the residence of Chief Minister Yamlal Kandel was set on fire. In Biratnagar, the capital of Koshi province, the district office and district court were set on fire, followed by the residence of the chief minister and cabinet ministers. The prison in Kailali district was attacked by the protesters. All inmates fled. Rabi Lamichane was set free from the Naku jail in Kathmandu. The prison was later set on fire. All prisoners fled. Kaski prison was also set on fire, resulting in the escape of 773 inmates. In Banka district, 5 inmates were killed after security forces opened fire during a jailbreak at a juvenile correctional facility. The building of the road department was severely damaged after being set on fire by protesters, along with the Office of Commission for the Investigation of Abuse of Authority. The lower station of the Chandragiri cable car was also set on fire, along with the CG Electronics Digital Park, Balambu, and Thangkot police station. Several protesters were injured. 33 were treated in the teaching hospital. 3 policemen died in Koteshwar. Curfew was imposed in several cities, including Kathmandu, Birgunj, Bairahawa, Butwal, Pokhara, Itahari, and Damak. Additionally, the police and armed forces began going house by house near the protests, searching for protesters, as well as raiding the civil service hospital, where wounded and dying protesters were taken after being shot or otherwise beaten by government forces. A football friendly between Nepal and Bangladesh was cancelled. Talks about restoring the monarchy re-emerged, with former King Gyanendra emerging as a symbol of resistance for those disillusioned with the current political system, particularly from the royalist opposition to the post-Nepali Civil War governments. Earlier in the year, monarchists protested calling for a restoration, ending with a heavy crackdown that caused at least 2 deaths. At around 10 p.m. NPT, the Nepali army stated that it would take charge of the country in the absence of the Prime Minister to ensure law and order is maintained. The press release called for cooperation as they deployed troops later that evening into the early hours of the following day. Later in the evening, the Chief of Army Staff, Ashok Raj Sigdel, appealed to the agitating groups for talks. On September 10th, in the early morning, Nepali army forces were seen patrolling neighborhoods in critical areas. General Sigdel again encouraged protesters to remain peaceful as the government attempts to restore peace. Between approximately 10 a.m. NPT on the 9th of September and 10 p.m. NPT on the 10th of September, the army announced detaining 27 individuals on counts of looting, arson, and other destructive and anarchic activities, and seizing weaponry. Later reports counted 31 firearms. At some places, protesters continued raiding government buildings and politicians' homes through the night, with one video showing a group of protesters taking firearms from homes, including what is believed to be a GSG 522 carbine and a bolt-action rifle. The pace was slowed down by noon. A group of protesters started cleaning the street near the Parliament building that was set on fire the previous day. Many army weapons were captured by protesters. One video included armor vests, L1A1 SLR rifles, 37mm Webley and Scott Shermuli grenade launchers, INSA S1B1 rifles, Lee Enfield rifles, and Ishapur 1A1 rifles. Protesters held online discussions to select the interim leader. Around 10 p.m., NPT, the group voted and selected Sushila Karki. Balin Shah and Kulman Gising were other candidates. Balin reportedly did not pick up the phone. Durga Prasad separately met with the army chief, but no concrete conclusion was met. Karki confirmed her willingness to accept the role in an interview with News 18. In Pokhara, 2 dead bodies were found inside a burned house at Naya Bazar and Lakeside. Police stated that as of 10 September, more than 13,500 prisoners had escaped from prisons nationwide. Soldiers arrested 303 of those prisoners and handed them over to police. 73 rifles were also returned. In Dading district, 2 inmates were shot dead and 7 injured by soldiers when they tried to flee, while soldiers also thwarted an attempted jailbreak in Kathmandu's main prison. TIA's closure was extended late in the morning, but eventually resumed operations. On September 11th in the morning, a meeting was held that included President Paudel, General Sigdel, and GenZ representatives. The meeting was held at Bhadrakali Army Headquarters as part of efforts to select an interim leader. According to sources, the GenZ group is trying to promote former Chief Justice Sushila Karki, Kathmandu Mayor Balendra Shah, and 2 others for the role. Now, Amnesty International condemned the crackdown and called for independent investigation and accountability. On the 8th of September, it called for a de-escalation while urging authorities to exercise maximum restraint in its use of force. It supported the protesters' rights to protest peacefully and demanded the government heed the legitimate demands of the youth to end corruption, to re-establish civil liberties. Human Rights Watch did not immediately make a statement on the protests, but suggested certain actions in a news report on the 9th of September. Its statements were supported by findings that the Nepali government has a record of silencing online speech, which fueled growing discontent in younger population. Citing the ban's lifting and rampant militaristic police violence, it suggested that Nepali authorities should promptly and impartially investigate the police use of force and appropriately discipline or prosecute all those responsible for abuses, regardless of rank. Its Asia director, Meenakshi Ganguly, underscored that the police shootings shows the administration's appalling disregard for the lives of its own citizens and desperate need to suppress criticism. It further cited the UN Basic Principles on the Use of Force and Firearms and tracking of the UN Human Rights Committee to argue that the government's use of live ammunition was extrajudicial. The International Federation for Human Rights and World Organization Against Torture released a joint statement condemning the crackdown on peaceful protests on the 9th of September. It called for the government to immediately halt all forms of violation and brutality by authorities against protesters, ensure that the ban rollback was permanent through legal means, and to uphold its state party status to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, by maintaining respect for the fundamental rights of its people, both online and offline. What are your thoughts? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below.